How's it going, guys? We're in a new location today. We met Mr. Albert here, but we're still Bigtalk-Smallroom. I'm Andrew.
I'm Tracy.
And today we have Albert Hunt with us. He was a diver.
Yeah, construction diver in the Army.
Okay.
Anybody ever tell you look like Santa Claus?
I don't want to talk about that.
Stupid.
That was for you, Mr. Ballad.
Thanks for your comments. Make sure you comment. And if you see something you want us to do, a little skit or something, we'll try it. We're up for about most things. So let us know. But we do look at the comments. We try to reply to them. Sometimes it takes a little while. But we look at them. We appreciate you viewing. Likes and your comments are much appreciated. So let's get right on into it.
So how did you start diving?
Yeah, when I got out of high school, I got my draft notice back in the days when you used to give you your lottery number and stuff. And rather than do 2 years of what they wanted me to do, I was willing to do longer to do what I wanted to do. So when I found out I was going to be drafted, I went over there to the recruiter and told him I wanted to sign up. He said, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I don't know. What do you got?" He said, he threw this book at me. It was about that thick. Threw it on the table and said, "Here, this is everything we have." So I looked through the book, and when I come across the page said diver, I said, "That's what I want to do right there." He said, "Well, I don't know. I never signed everybody up to be a diver." He said, "I don't know what I have to do for that. Just we'll put the paperwork in and see what they say." So I gave him some background on me. I was always around the water and stuff. I enjoyed it all the time. They put the paperwork in. Oh, he told me I had to select 2 other things too, in case that did not go through. Yeah, I picked out something like aircraft mechanic and I don't know what else. I always want to say something my dad always said, that was Underground Balloon Corps Mess Kit Repair Division. But I don't remember what the other one was. But anyway, they put the paperwork in and it came back, I was approved. And it was that simple.
Diving sounds pretty interesting. It can be quite dangerous, can it?
It can. I look at it from the standpoint that any occupation that you go into can be dangerous. And some people argue with me about that, and they'll say, "Oh, no, if I'm working with electronics, that's not dangerous." Yeah, you can burn some equipment out, you can get shocked, stuff like that. Anything is dangerous. I always use the example of a steel worker, 40 floors up off the ground, walking a 6-inch beam, putting these things together like a erector set.
Yeah, not for me.
That's a long ways down, buddy. It's a sudden impact when you hit the bottom. But I think what makes the big difference is knowledge and training and education. You know, diving can be very dangerous. And it is, because you're dealing with so many different elements that are involved with you being out of your environment. But like I said, with the training, proper training, education, and knowledge, you can make it very, very safe.
You ever have any encounters with sharks? You know, it's you don't hear too much about divers encountering sharks, but I'm sure it could happen.
No, I think the closest I ever got to a shark was doing a diving job off the coast of North Carolina. We were doing bottoms samples. And I saw a cloud go over. It just got dark, just like it does on land when a cloud goes over. And I thought, wow, that was a big cloud. So I got out of the water. I told my dive buddy, I asked him, I said, "Did you see that cloud go over?" He said, "A cloud?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "No, it wasn't no cloud." He said, "That was a shark that swam over." I was like, huh. Good thing I didn't know.
Well, you know, what you don't know can't hurt you.
Yeah, can't do any harm, you know. I didn't have any fear or anything. Of course, if I'd known it, it might have been a different reaction.
Yeah, every time I get in the ocean, I hear that dun 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 dun. dun.
Yeah.
I'm always looking around. Of course, that was before that movie, but I would
It's funny you would say that. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just a young kid, and they took me out water skiing one time. I got in the bay, and they were towing me behind the boat. I got out there and got on the skis and everything. I was too scared. I made them bring me back to the boat. I was afraid a shark was going to get me. So go figure, I'm afraid a shark's going to get me. And then what profession do I get into? Diving, you know. But that's just the way it goes, I guess.
What different type of diving rigs or whatever they call it would have you done? You done a few different types, a couple different types?
Yeah, there's a couple different types of diving equipment, and there's a couple different types of diving procedures.
I've seen like the old movies. You see the guys jump off the boat and they got this, I don't know, looked like some kind of leather suit or something with a big old helmet on their head and the big holes
Like
coming
a
out.
goldfish helmet.
Yeah, it looked like
Goldfish bowl.
a goldfish bowl or something. You ever done that?
Yeah, I was trained in that. They don't train in it anymore because they have new equipment now. But I was trained in that back in the day when I went in. And I mean, that's like 200 pounds plus or minus some. The helmet that you're talking about and the breastplate alone is like 54 pounds.
Good grief.
And then, then you got the heavy shoes, and then you got a weight belt that goes on. And
Don't seem like you need a weight bit with all that weight on it.
it's very cumbersome on the surface. I mean, your shoulders will get sore because all that weight, and they actually strap you down in it so that the suit doesn't rise up. So you got like what they call the jockeying harness that goes between your legs, and they jock that down really tight because if you don't, it'll float up, get out of reach of the controls you're supposed to have to regulate your air and exhaust. Could be a bad situation.
Yeah.
But when you get in the water, it's not bad at all. You can control the amount of air you have in the suit. And
You got a guy up top like pumping air in
they
there.
used to have those. Yeah, they used to have that old hand crank. You see that on the old, I don't know, I can't remember the name of it, Donovan's Reap or something with John Wayne or whatever. The guy out there with a big old, we always call him a coffee grinder. It looked like a big old coffee grinder. You wind there and get you air. That was the most valuable guy on the dive station back then.
I bet.
He was the one to supply you with the air. If you stopped to scratch his nose or something.
You don't want to make that guy mad if he's in the suit.
That's like being
Oh, yeah?
and
How about now?
making your cook angry at you, being in the military, you make your cook mad at you, you get really good tasting food.
Little extra trips to the latrine too, huh?
But, just like everything else, things have evolved and, they have really good equipment and excellent. That's part of what you were talking about earlier when you said, is it dangerous? Well, it goes into that aspect also, knowing your equipment and doing proper maintenance on your equipment, making sure everything is running properly. And, we do air samples and all that good stuff. I was on a job one time. Once again, it was in North Carolina. There was a pier that went out.
Shout out in North Carolina.
There was some instrumentation that was on the end of the pier that they had out there for determining wave height and currents and sand shifting and all that stuff. It was a government agency that was studying for the changing of the sands along the coastline. A storm come through and knocked it over and got buried in the sand. And we had to go down and retrieve that equipment. And I was down there and had the jetting pump, and had my feet wrapped around the pipe because I jetted it out enough to get down there, jetted out.
That's like a vacuum cleaner or more like a pressure washer.
It's like like a fire hose. It was off of a water pump, applying pressure, and you just run it in the hole. And of course, with sand, it filters back in very quickly. So in order to go deeper, you have to make it wider, so it doesn't have much of an angle. If you make it a sharp angle, it'll fill in right away. And it was down almost to the point where I could start getting some of the equipment off the pole. And all of a sudden I went to move my foot a little bit, feeling stuck. The hole filled in. It literally filled up to my chest.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
When I was in the water. And what had happened was they had a malfunction with the pump. So I called topside. I didn't panic or get upset or anything because I still had air coming down, you know, so there was no reason to get upset. But I was very curious as to what's
Curious.
So I asked them, they said, yeah, the pump went bad. They sent a guy in the shore to cannibalize another pump to bring it up. They say it took like about a half hour or so. I was literally, had my arm on the bottom. I was like, I could almost fall asleep. But like I said, I mean, that could be a scary situation. And it would be if my air stopped all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd been a bad day.
Well, the good thing is when we're diving like that and you have that possibility, you also have an air tank on our back as a reserve air. So if you did lose air from the surface, you could switch over to the tank on your back. That gave you a little bit more time. Hopefully by that time they'd either have it fixed or send somebody down with another bottle of air for you so you can still breathe. At least that was the procedure for it all.
Right. Yeah, well, you cover everything you can, but you don't know what you're going to get into till you find something unexpected. So.
Yeah. You always try to set the odds in your favor. And then anything that's unexpected, you just kind of deal with as they come along. And once again, training and knowledge and experience helps you improve that over time.
Best chance to succeed.
Yeah.
Well, if someone wanted to be a diver, what would be the process to get into that? Someone's looking into being one.
I have to be honest with you, nowadays, I'm not really sure because I've been retired from the Army so long. So I don't know what their procedure is anymore. I'm sure it's changed over time. But the best thing to do if you're looking to get into Army diving is seek out your recruiter and tell them that's what you would like to do if you're interested in it and see what they can do for you. There are other ways also. You could also probably Google. I mean, you can Google anything anymore. So you could do that and you can find out what units the Army has for construction diving. And then you could actually call them and they'd be more than glad to help you, I would think. They always were. I don't see why they would change.
The Army?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure anybody,
Of course, you have the Navy and divers.
any recruiter would be more than happy to help you because he's trying to get his numbers up.
I don't want to talk ill about the recruiters, but they're probably not the, in my opinion, they're probably not the most reliable.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's not really good to say, I guess, but that's just my opinion.
When I was in the Marine Corps, my recruiter sold me a bed of roses, and I never seen that when I was in.
Sure, it's a bad taste you get.
So, yeah, so I mean, we can slap the recruiters around a little bit. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind bashing on them some.
And don't get me wrong, there are recruiters out there that'll do everything they can to help you out, you know. But just like in the general public or in the world itself, there's some people who pay more attention to help you more than others. Yeah.
So you was also a dive instructor after you got out. How long did you spend in the Army before you done that?
Yeah, I was in the Army for 20 plus years.
Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you. I also instructed in the Army. Early on in my career, I did a couple weeks at the salvage school that the Army had in the early 70s. I was like an assistant instructor because they needed some people. I did that for a couple weeks. And then later on in my career, I went out to Port Hueneme and I taught out there at the underwater construction school, I guess it is, UCT school for the CV divers, teaching them different equipment to utilize in the field for doing things. So while I was in the military, I always heard of this commercial diving school that was in South Jersey, and that's where I'm from. And I thought, wow, I used to tell people, when I retire, I'm going to be a commercial dive instructor. And of course, everybody'd say, yeah, sure, okay, yeah. But when I retired, I looked them up and inquired with them and got an interview and got hired. So then I taught at the commercial diving school for 16 years before I retired again.
So you pretty much done your dream job then.
Oh, I feel so blessed to have the life that I have. I can't say enough how important I feel that it is that if you're going to find a job that you want to do, whatever it may be, make sure that you get something you really enjoy doing, something that you like, something you can get into, and it's not work to get into it because you like it. You know, to me, that just, like you said, it's a dream job. You know, I got to be a diver. I was very, very happy with it. I wouldn't, after experiencing, I wouldn't want to do anything else. And I just think if you can find that little niche that each and every person has, that they really enjoy something, it's not like going to work. And the best thing about it is you really enjoy it and you get paid for it.
Yeah, it's always nice to
How
get
can you
paid.
go wrong with that?
Yeah, get paid for your hobby or your, you know, you're enjoying, and you're training people, and you know you're making a difference that will save somebody's life by them following the instructions that you're giving them.
I always thought that was something good was an instructor at the commercial diving school, that I was able to pass on 20 years of experience and knowledge to people that wanted to get in there and do the same thing. I enjoyed it a whole bunch. It was a lot of fun.
What about, I see some of the, a lot of people are just doing their own thing diving. What, do you think that's a bad idea?
Yeah, I do. Because, like I said earlier, if you don't have the knowledge, you can really hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Or you could put somebody else in jeopardy. Say the three of us went diving and none of us are experienced. And we could go in and have a successful dive because we don't do anything that's going to be wrong for us or causes physical harm or anything. But what if you were to have a problem and panic? And then we panic. Before you know it, all three of us are in trouble.
Yeah.
Where we don't have the experience or knowledge to know what to do for you. Like it could be something as simple as buddy breathing. You know, you learn that when you learn how to dive. So I would discourage anybody from trying to do it just on their own without any training. And that's just looking at it basically, that's not even getting into the physics behind it. Because when you go in the water, you're in a different environment. You're not in the environment we're designed to live in. And we're at equal pressures right now inside our lungs and outside our lungs. As you go in the water, those pressure differentials change. And if you're breathing compressed air underwater, just in theory, if you're at 33 feet, which 33 feet doesn't sound very deep. If you're like at 33 feet, that's one atmosphere of water. That's 2 atmospheres absolute between there and the surface. And what I mean by that is your lungs, if you are breathing compressed air and you hold your breath and come up in the water column, your lungs will expand twice the normal size. And of course, that's a lot of pressure on the inside And all it has to do is put a pinhole in your lung, and you got problems. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different atmospheric pressures. So if you go down, you hear about people getting dive sickness. I guess they call it the bends or something. Is there certain depths where people are more prone to get that?
Yeah. You have decompression sickness, is what you're talking about. And then you have air embolism. Air embolism was what I was talking about, holding your breath and coming back up. Pop your lung. That would be an air embolism. Decompression sickness is that you go down to a deeper depth, and because you're down there, your body naturally tries to equalize. So you have different percentage of oxygen in your bloodstream. You have different percentages of nitrogen in your bloodstream. They're the two main gases you have going through your bloodstream. Nitrogen is the one that will cause you decompression sickness, because you go down and because you have more pressure going into your lungs because of trying to be equalized pressure-wise. You're also taking on more nitrogen. So you take on more nitrogen, and that filters into your bloodstreams and your tissue. So when you're finished with your dive and you come back to the surface, you may have to come up at a particular rate, and you may have to stop at a certain depth. And the reason you're stopping is you're getting to the point where you have to allow that nitrogen to come out of your bloodstream and be exhaled back out through your breathing system. If you skip that stop and you go up further, you may end up having bubbles created into your bloodstream, and that's decompression sickness. Of course, there's a whole plethora of things that happens or can happen after that.
Nothing good.
No, not usually. The only thing that would be good is if you successfully are able to treat it. And that's not always promising. You can have residual effects. But you can have, depends where that bubble in your bloodstream gets caught. It could get caught in your bloodstream for your head, and you just go unconscious. Could be in your heart, stop your heart pumping,
That's less than ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that whole stopping in the middle of the water, when you're going down, that's why I don't do that diving thing. I'm stopped. I don't know what the depth is, but we'll pretend like it's 30 feet. I'm stopped at 30 feet, and the whole time all I'm hearing is dun, 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 dun. I'm like, hello, dun, 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 dun. That's I like the guys that go down and video it so I can stay dry and watch.
I like to just use the little robots,
Yeah.
the submarine.
Well, they have 1 atmosphere suits also, where you can climb in this suit, and it's the same atmosphere as it is right here. You get down there, you can do your work. They can lower you down, do your work. They can bring you back up. You don't have to decompress because you're at that 1 atmosphere, and you can come back to the surface. They also have another type of diving called saturation diving, where they'll take people and put them in a chamber or a facility, and they go down, put them down in the water, and they stay down there for 30 days. It'll be down there for 30 days. And, say there's 6 of them or something like that, hypothetically. 2 people will go out, and they'll get their helmets on and everything, go out, and they'll do their 6 or 8 hour shift. They'll come back into the facility. 2 more people will go out, do theirs, come back in the facility. And they do that for the 30 days. And then at the end of their saturation dive, they just bring the whole thing up, and they connect it to the complex on the surface at the same pressure that they were at for the 30 days. And they transfer into that, and they do their decompression in that facility on the barge or the boat or whatever it is. Then they can free up that habitat to put more people in and go down and work all over again.
Wow, it's definitely scary.
You definitely don't want to be claustrophobic.
Yeah, I'm not real claustrophobic, but that's just not my. Just strikes me as being in the water, being down there like that. So it's a long time to be. 30 days. That's a long time to be downstairs, down in the water, and who knows, different depths because these guys are working in pretty deep water sometimes. So
as a diver, what are some jobs that you have done? You talked earlier about, when you got trapped. What are some other jobs you have done?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things I've done. I probably forgot more than I can remember. But I've done jobs with changing screws and shafts on boats. And we've done that both. One situation, we'd back the boat up to a beachfront, and we could actually stand on the bottom and take the screw off of it, or the propeller, take it off, put the new one on. Or we would take the shaft out, disconnect it from the engine, take the shaft out through the hull, and then put a new one in. Of course, there's a whole big long procedure. We pull it out, put a plug in so the water didn't run back in. Then we get everything squared away, get it under there, the new shaft, get it ready to put in, pull the plug out, put it back in, and put it back together. I've done salvage work, salvaged a couple different items, done pier inspections, hydrographic surveys, cutting welding underwater, demolitions. Demolitions was one of my favorite, but you didn't get a big call for that, In order to do something with demolitions, there's a lot of restrictions on it and stuff, We used to use demolitions to blow the screw off of the propeller. Just take a couple of wraps of deck cord after we loosened up the boss nut, set it off, and would blow the propeller loose on the shaft because the shafts would be tapered. So it would loosen it up, make it easier to take off. We've changed screws on tugboats. You had maybe a 6 to 8 foot diameter propeller that you're changing out. The way we would do that is with a crane and use a T-bar. We'd hang the new screw or propeller on one side, put the old one on the other side. It would balance it out. When you're underwater, one person could take and turn it around, put the new one on. It was pretty neat.
That's pretty cool.
And, I think the deepest dive that I ever made was about 300 foot, but that was in a school environment. It was a qualification dive that we had to make. It was in a tank that had water, and then the whole thing was pressurized to equal to a 300 foot. That was pretty interesting. We did it one dive on air, and that gave you like a drunk effect. It's called nitrogen narcosis because the nitrogen has a side effect that once you get so much of it in your bloodstream, it kind of makes you feel loopy. And then to appreciate the different types of gases you could use, we did another dive with mixed gas, which was helium and oxygen. And that nitrogen is not in the air at that time, so you don't have to worry about nitrogen narcosis. Nitrogen is what they call an inert gas. Inert meaning that it won't dissipate or whatever. You have to allow it to come out at the proper rate like I was talking about early. You replace that with helium. Helium's an inert gas also, so you'd have to do decompression to allow the helium to come out, but it didn't have the side effect of making you drunk.
Or did you come out talking, with higher pitch?
Oh yeah, just like everybody tries, inhaling a helium balloon and yeah, you could talk like that.
That'd be interesting conversation if you had one in a mask where you could talk to each other. Hey guys, what's going on?
Sound like that cartoon.
Yeah, which we shall not name.
What was one of your favorite jobs or dives?
Oh man, one of my favorite jobs is when we did that salvage job in the Intercoastal Waterway. And that was down here at the Intercoastal Waterway, I think in like the southern part of North Carolina or the northern part of South Carolina. I don't remember exactly which. And a tugboat had hit something submerged, and it tore a gash about 11, 12, 13 inches long, and it flooded and sunk. And before it sunk, the guy drove it aground along the edge of the Intercoastal Waterway. And we had to go down and locate the rip in the hull, patch it, and then we had to pump and dry. That was pretty interesting. We had to build a cofferdam out of 55-gallon drums on the tail end of the tugboat in order to make sure the water wouldn't run back in. You know, the cofferdam just extended the watertight integrity of the inside of the boat so we could put a hose down there and pump the water out. And as it would rise, once it got up to the deck got above the water line, then we could take that off and just pump down in the engine room and cruise quarters and stuff like that. But that was pretty interesting. There was a barge on the side of it that had a winch. We had to pull it over on its side in order to get to the tear in the side of the hull. We inspected and everything. We found out what it was. We kind of rocked it over so they could weld a patch on above the water instead of doing the welding underwater. So that's what we ended up doing. We patched it, floated it, and then tilted it over on its side and had a welder come down and welded the patch on it. Then they took that to the shipyard, which was going down here to South Carolina somewhere. Of course, they had to send other boats down to do it.
Did you ever do any welding underwater yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I liked doing that. That was a lot of fun. I'd have to say, in all honesty, I wasn't the best, but I enjoyed doing it. To me, it always seemed a lot easier underwater than it did topside, because topside you had to manipulate the puddle, and they teach you to work it back and forth, working the puddle that you're welding in. Underwater, I don't know what the techniques are now. They're always improving it, but back then, you just had to get this is where I'm welding. You had to get your rod and your lead into your travel because you'd be going this way. And you had to try to get equal penetration to both sides of the plate so you can get good penetration. And it was just a matter of not traveling too fast and not traveling too slow. But I thought it was a lot easier. But like I said, I was far from an expert. But I could stick some metal together. It would never pass a pressure test, let's put it that way. If it was but they do have people that go underwater welding in dry environments. They make a dry environment underwater around the pipeline so they can do welding, and then it's pressure tested, NDT'd to make sure there's no flaws in the weld because it has to meet the standards for being pressurized. I mean, they have, depending on how deep you want to get into it or whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I know I had a job one time where I'd done a little bit of welding. I wasn't the best myself, but I was kneeling down in a puddle of water while I was, and that thing lit me up. I mean, you wouldn't realize it, but I had my knee down in some water and I was welding on some metal that was, come down to concrete, and I was on concrete. And as soon as I hit, I felt it. I said, "Ooh!"
Well, people get all worried when you talk about welding underwater and say, "Aren't you going to get electrocuted?" Once again, go back to training and education. You make sure where your welding and your ground lead are closer together than you are. Yeah. But I've had my teeth tingle. And when you're underwater welding, you get a little tingle in your teeth. And I've also gotten shocked too, but it wakes you up real quick and you realize that you got to move.
Yeah, that's I bet it does. That and looking up and seeing a shadow.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad that I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I'd have definitely had a different reaction to it if I knew what was swimming overhead. I saw a manta ray, I think it was. I was on a pier. It was another government pier, and the pilings on the pier were probably about 30 feet apart from one piling set to the next piling set supporting the pier. And I was on that. We saw this shadow coming in the water. It was out like right where the waves, just about where the waves were breaking. And it got closer and closer. So we, curious as to what it was, so we stood there and watched. It came all the way up to the pier. It turned left, went out to the end of the pier, turned right across the front, turned right again, come back down to approximately the same depth of water, and turned and continue heading south. It was so big that it felt intimidated to go between that pile bent that was 30 feet apart. It was a big manta ray. I'd never seen one that big before.
So what are your safety aspects about that? You can't just go down by yourself. You got to have a crew or something, right?
Yeah, the Army's really good at that. For the most part, we try to maintain like 6 people on a dive station for source supply diving. And that just works out that you got your diver, your 2 tenders, somebody working the comms and the air system, someone watching the compressor, someone taking care of this other thing, or, in support of putting you down there. And then you have the guy in charge that's responsible to make sure everything is set up right. And he goes through a checklist to make sure everything is functioning properly. But yeah, you don't normally go down by yourself. I mean, that's another one of those things where you're taking chances.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that have done stuff like that, and they've gotten away with it. But I think they wasted a chance to buy the lottery ticket.
Pretty lucky in that case, huh?
But it's safety was always a big thing. You train on the principles of diving, like I was talking about earlier, the difference in pressures, trying to be in pressure bound so you don't hurt yourself that way. Coming back and allowing yourself to off gas and diving procedures, emergency procedures. You hope you never have to use them. But we would practice those. We'd go out sometimes and set up a station and we would run drills.
Right.
Like somebody would go down and their drill would be that they lost air and was unconscious. And then you'd have to initiate the protocol for emergency procedures. Somebody be going over, checking the air, make sure you could try to restore the air to the diver. Somebody else, the standby diver, would be getting dressed. They'd be getting him in the water to go down to him. And then depending on what the emergency was, he may have to take some stuff with him or.
So you basically fall back on your level of preparation. I know a lot of people say rise to the occasion, but I tend to feel like you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back to where your level of preparation is. That's, if you're prepared to the point to where you've covered everything, then it shows that. It looks like people are just above and beyond, but they just going back to the training and the training's kicking in type thing.
And that's good, because like I said, you hope you never have to use it. But when you have that emergency arise, that's not the time to be panicking and getting all freaked out and losing your thought. What do I do? What do I do? You just, like you said, you snap your finger and you just start rattling off the stuff that has to be done. And everybody is trained on the station to follow through and do what they need to do, with guidance. But if you got a supervisor that's not prepared, things could go sour fast. That's when you hope you have somebody that may be down the chain, somewhere in the worker bees, I guess I would say, that they would be able to pick up and take over because someone's having a bad day or whatever.
Right.
I never saw it really happen. I have heard of it occurring, but I think they're far and few in between.
What do you think the biggest difference is? I know there's going to be a big difference, but I'm just curious. When you're diving in, say, murky water versus clear water, you've experienced both. So, what's the biggest advantages, disadvantages type thing? And
First thing off the top of my head is you're in awe. I mean, you just, oh, this is what it really looks like when it's clear. So, I dove for 8 years, and if we had visibility that was about this far, you thought you had outstanding visibility. You're like, man, I can actually see what I'm doing with my wrench today. Because if it's real bad visibility, you can't see it. So you're using your fingers and feeling and putting your wrench on it, or whatever tool it is you're using.
right.
It's like being blind. But the first time I had a chance to dive in clear water was on a job, Key West, Florida, and we're supporting special forces on some kind of dives they were doing. We were chamber support for them. We went out off of Key West, and I was standing on the boat looking down, and I was like, wow, look at that. I can see the sand. I can see the coral head. I can see the fan coral swaying back and forth. I got to get a tank on and get in the water. And I jumped in. I was just in awe. It just seemed, first of all, it's so quiet. When you're in the water, all you hear is the bubble. In scuba, you just hear the bubbles. You don't hear the planes above. You don't hear people talking, cars, all that stuff. It's just very regal. You look down and see the fan coral just majestically swaying back and forth. You're like, this is the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see, I saw a grouper that was hiding down in the coral head. But that was amazing to me. And like I said, 8 years. And up to that point, that's good visibility too. It was 52 foot. And when you got in the water, you could probably see 100 foot horizontally. The water was so clear.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow. That sounds like a good dive for that.
Yeah.
Nice and clear.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say would be one of your worst dives? That sounds like a good one. What would be one of the worst ones?
I'd have to say pretty close to the one I was stuck in the ground,
Yeah.
being caught up to the chest. I had a couple other experiences of being out of air and stuff like that were not the most pleasant, but it wasn't really bad. And I wasn't really terrified with being stuck. As long as I was getting air to the helmet, I'd stay there all day long. I get paid anyhow. This is great.
Yeah. That's true.
Of course, if I was a commercial diver, I'd probably get paid a lot more rather than military diving. But,
Yeah. Well, you definitely don't want to be claustrophobic for that. Stuck up to your waist in the sand.
But I've had out of air situations, been very winded and mentally scared when I've gotten back to the surface. It's not a nice feeling, but you can imagine it, having your air, something we take for granted so much, it's just there, we breathe it. And then not to be able to have it and gasping for it. You're like, oh shit. Beep, beep. But it's not a good feeling. Not at all. But I'd have to say most of my dives were always good, even if the job was not successful. I like diving so much that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because not every job's going to go perfect. You know, I just enjoyed what I did. And it was really a great opportunity to do that. Have you ever thought that you wanted to try diving?
No, I don't think so. I thought about the little scuba mask. I don't know if you've seen them. It's like a mask that they come out with, similar to diving mask, but it's not a scuba mask. It's a what is it called? A
Snorkeling.
snorkel mask.
Yeah.
So,
It has the air hose come down to it.
yeah, well, it's kind of like a snorkel. It's just got a mask and it comes out. It's got a valve so that water don't come back down it. I thought about doing that when I was in the Bahamas, but I learned to swim to stay on top of the water, so that's kind of where I am with that.
Well, they have developed a lot of different things that gives people the opportunity to see what it's like underwater. I saw, like down in Florida, I guess, or Bahamas, where they have these little scooters that you can sit on, and they put a helmet on your head. I don't want to take away from it, but I will by saying it's like a trash can turned upside down.
Yeah,
It's basically just a clear glass thing that goes on your head, and they have an air hose to it, so you can breathe air, ride around on your scooter and check it out. Yeah. And they have dives that are very shallow that they put you in, have like a rope line that you can walk around through. But they still, even doing that, you need to make sure that you have a certain amount of training so you don't cause yourself harm. Yeah.
yeah. I know something we was talking earlier. You notice some of the different cruise lines still have a guy um, excursion where you can go diving. They're diving in 10, 15 feet of water, 12 feet, something like that. And these guys give you an hour or two of training. There's no way that an hour or 2 hours is enough training for somebody to learn diving. It might be okay in a swimming pool under supervised, but I just don't agree with the way they do it.
Yeah. For doing it recreationally, I don't care for that. Of course, it all depends on who you have teaching you and that they're putting out the correct information so you understand what's going on with you. But I think you should definitely get the training for it. It's just so easy you never plan on it, but something could go wrong and then it's too late to get it right then.
Yeah, you don't want to be on one of Mr. Ballin episodes.
No. Back to that. No. Definitely not.
Have you ever thought about trying it?
I've thought about it a couple times that I've seen, where people go deep and come up too fast and have all those issues. That kind of scares me a little bit, but
Well, there's an old wise tale. I don't know how true it is or not, but I've heard it. I've heard it ever since I've been in the field. And the old copper helmet you were talking about earlier with the breastplate, they say that the pressure, you can go deep enough that if the air stops going in your suit, this is before they had what they called non-return valves. A non-return valve will let air come into your hat or your suit, but not go out. It stops it from going out. So this is before they had non-return valves. And if for some reason compression went out topside, you don't have any pressure coming down to you. So that pressure outside of you squeezes that suit, the helmet and the canvas suit and everything. It squeezes that because as it shrinks the volume, it increases the pressure to be a pressure balance. And that's what the name of the game is, always have to be a pressure balance. So you don't have the air coming in, they reduce the volume, increases the pressure. And that a human being could actually get stuffed up inside that helmet.
That's a bad day.
I don't know how true, but I will tell you that that story's been around as long as I've been in the field.
Well, I know I've seen some of the submersibles on TV. They'll put a big styrofoam cup in it, and then they'll go down at pressure. When they come back up, the cup's like this size, and they show it to the original size cups because he's pulling out a stacking, and it's so much difference in size from the pressure. So yeah, it's
I got a cup like that at home. When I was out in California teaching, they had a research lab that was out there and had this heavy duty pressure vessel. And they would take a box or whatever, like 12-inch or 12-ounce coffee cups and put in there and pressurize it to the equivalency of the Marianas Trench, which is like 36,000 feet or something like that. And then when it comes back, it's like you're talking about, it's like a shot glass. But that's the styrofoam, and it's got all that air particles in there. It just compresses all the air bubbles, and that's all that's left.
a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us. I know you've been a little bit under the weather, as have I, and we appreciate you helping us learn a little bit about diving and sharing your knowledge with us.
My pleasure. I was glad to come on and talk about diving. Never know, someone may hear it that wants to get into the diving field, whether it's military or commercial diving or whatever. It may be their dream job. Yeah. And that's something I liked about instructing, was always knowing that I was able to pass my experience on to other people if that's what they were looking to do and get into it. I feel very fortunate to be able to do that or attempt to do it.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. Albert Hunt. And we don't have the
Thank you.
thing behind us because, like you said, we're come out to do this at a different location. We thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and don't forget to share. Sharing's caring. And if you see the little secret thing we put in the episode, leave us a comment. Let us know you saw it when you saw it. And we'll mention you in the next video. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.